Hi, I'm Jake, and today on the channel we're going to be cutting up my 1973 Datsun 510, or at least these rear arches. So here is one of the rear arches in question, and this is what I'll be making a start on replacing in this video. There are two main reasons why I'm looking to get rid of these arches. Firstly, is there's actually very little clearance on the inside, so when the previous owner welded these arches on, they didn't do a very good job of the inside, and it's very, very close to the tyre. You can probably see it's been rubbing on the tyre a little bit, despite it looking like I should probably have a bit more clearance than I do. And you can feel it when you put your hand up and underneath, like where the tyre's rubbing, the inner arch is probably that much further away than the outer. So definitely step to give myself a lot more tyre clearance there, which will then allow me to get rid of some of this negative camber I've got in the back. It's about 6 degrees at the moment, but the options for getting rid of that are either leave it as is or raise the car up, neither of which I sort of want to do at this moment. And here's the second reason. So as you can see, there is quite a nasty looking rust hole here. I did put a patch on the inside of here, just underneath, because it's close to where the tyres rub, and I didn't want sort of any damage done to the tyres. So I put a shitty patch on the back of it a couple months ago, but now it's time to do it properly. So these arch panels are what I've got in mind. These are Pon Retro metal arches from Thailand. I didn't buy them direct, I got them off a friend who no longer needs them for his own project. And I think they're going to fit quite nicely. Those of you who follow me on Instagram may have seen I also posted up a picture, let's see if I can overlay it, of some Mark 1 Golf arches, but I think I prefer the look of these. They don't fit exactly right at the moment because these are a bit narrower than what's on there already. As you can see, it's being held off, but I've got a vision and I think it's going to work out quite nicely. So here we are a couple minutes later. I've jacked the car up, removed the rear wheel, and we can have a bit of a look underneath and see what we're working with. So up in there, in this region, you can see where the tyre's been rubbing, and it's sort of hard to see on camera, but hopefully you can get a bit of an idea as to how much distance there is between those 2 points. I'm hoping I can sort of reduce that and make it, looking at the back here as well, it's very thick. Hopefully I can give myself a nice amount more clearance once I'm done. I mean, overall it's not terrible under here, it's not too rusty. There is a patch that goes around here. It's very, very thin metal, I think less than a mil thick, that I did just because that's where the tyre was rubbing, and that's sort of opposite where the rust is on the other side. So that's where we are currently with this rear arch. I'm going to have a bit of a think about where to start. I might wire wheel off the outside and see how much filler we've got, because to be honest, it sounds pretty solid, but I've got no idea if this is actually metal or not. The other option is just start cutting. Until I cut away at least the outer portion of this, I'm not going to be able to position the new arch exactly where it's going to live, just because this one's a bit wider. So yeah, I'll have a bit of a think about this and decide what to do next. So I've decided to make a start and just start cutting these arches off. I'm going to use tin snips at first. An angle grinder will also work and be pretty easy, but to be honest, look how quick and easy this is. And it's got the added benefit of not making too much noise or mess. It's pretty easy actually. You can see we've got a little bit of filler here, but actually on the whole, I'm not that surprised. Well, pleasantly at least. Might need to get the angle grinder out. The bit where it starts getting thicker, I'm having a bit of trouble with. Yeah, that's it. First cut's made. No going back now. One small amount of cutting and trimming later, this is where we are. Obviously the arch isn't fully removed yet, but I've chopped enough of it off that I think I can get the new panel in place. where I want it to be without it sitting on the arch underneath. So let's sellotape that on and have a look at it. So here we have the arch panel in what I think is about the right sort of place. You can see the front of it lines up with the bottom of the door roughly, and the rear of it with the change in angle on the rear quarter. And also I've been very careful to make sure that I measure the distance from this body line to the bottom of the arch, so about there, just to make sure it's consistent side to side. I quite like where the other arch is sat. I don't want these ones either too high or too low, so it's sort of a balancing thing of those three aspects, and I think these about the right sort of place now. And now I know where this is, it means I can trace around it, sort of trim a bit more off, and yeah, start making some more progress. So it's the next morning now. Didn't get too much time yesterday. I'm back in the garage again. It's bloody cold, very icy outside, so I put on my little diesel heater. This thing is so great in the garage. Kicks out some nice heat. It's warmed up in no time. Just a diesel cab heater from a truck. Perfect for the garage. So I've just quickly chucked the wheel back on and jacked it up to put it into about the right position, and with the arch sort of in the right position, I can get my finger between the tyre and the arch all the way around. And that's actually without, these arches still have some lips that need rolling on the inside, so yeah, I've got a finger width of gap at the moment, plus probably at least another 5mm, if not 10mm, from rolling these arches once I'm finished. So should have quite a bit more clearance. And I think higher up in the arch, once I trim out the inner arches, plenty of clearance. I was also just checking that the wheel looks okay front to back, because obviously with this arch I could shift it forward or backwards slightly. I'm thinking it looks pretty good at the moment. It's basically centered over where the wheel arch used to be. So yeah, this is all looking pretty good at the moment. So you can probably see at the moment what I've done now is trace around this current arch with a Sharpie, including a few vertical marks, just to make sure that when I start cutting, I don't cut too far. It's going to overlap this door quite a bit. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to deal with that. I think I'll do everything else first, cut out the section I need to for the door well, and then deal with the door last. Yeah. Now for the extremely daunting part, which is cutting a load more metal off. Oh wow, seeing this cut line without the arch in place really shows how much metal work is going to have to be removed. I do really hope I don't fuck this up. Some more trimming later, and this is where we are. As you can see, I've cut out all this area. This was the area that was quite rusty before, sort of this patch. Trimmed it out. This inner corner here, I think, was where the tyre was catching previously on the inside, so I've trimmed that up quite a bit. It's a good 10mm higher or so than it was previously. I'm not looking forward to repatching this area once I've finished with it. There's a few complicated shapes, and it is also where the door seal will seal. So you can see where the door overlaps, and currently you can see on the inside as well, you can see the door seal in here. So hopefully once I finish cutting metal out and start putting it back together, hopefully it all just falls into place. Okay, so I've got a lot of this area cut out now, and I'm going to start mocking up metal to put back in again. And the area I'm going to start with is this lip that goes from here to here, and this is where the door seal sits. So this is one sort of strip of metal that has to be in the position it's currently in. A lot of the other bits around here you can be a bit more flexible with, but this piece from here to here door seal wise has to go there really. So I'm going to use good old fashioned cardboard 80 design. Everyone's favourite CAD. I like to use sort of single thickness card, like a cereal box. In this case it's a pizza box, but it doesn't matter what food you use. Something like that. Because the good thing about this metal is unless you've got advanced metal shaping tools, this cardboard will bend in a very similar way that metal will. As in, it's quite easy to fold in one dimension, but two-dimensional shapes are quite hard to achieve. So I'm just going to sort of take that in there. Let me trim off a little bit of this excess. And hopefully if I shut this door and then draw around the inside, there you go. So I've got the line where this door seal will sit. I'm just going to offset that by a few mil. That's a good starting point for making some metal. So here we have our completed cardboard 80 design flange. So it just follows this lip around here, and this is where the door seal will sit. So as mentioned, this has to be in this position. The stuff around that we can be a bit more flexible with. I don't really have any shrinking or stretching tools or anything fancy like that, so this is going to be like a multi-piece repair with basically loads of smaller sections welded together. This bit up here shouldn't be too hard to patch. It'll probably end up being a further two pieces, one that sort of follows this surface and then another one that follows this flat surface here. But yeah, I feel like we're making a little bit of progress. Here we have our initial CAD design cut out in metal. This is 1.2mm thick steel, and yeah, back to welded in place. So first bit of welding on this car, I believe. One of the things you want to make sure is if you're butt welding panels together, make sure they're flush. Tack it once, double check everything, because if you weld the panel out of alignment, it's a pain in the ass to try and get it looking smooth again. Virtually impossible in some cases. But yeah, here goes nothing. Ooh, that's fucking thin. It's probably a bit hot on the welder, given how thin this metal is, but we got it to stick. Yeah, there we go. Just double check alignment. So as you can see, I've tack welded this piece in for the door seal to sit against. I've also tacked a little patch in here. What I did was I've pulled this corner out towards me a little bit, just to increase clearance on the back of this section here. There's plenty of clearance from here to the door. So yeah, pulled that out a little bit, and this bit was rusty. So a little patch in there. This will be the next piece I'm going to make, which basically continues this panel down to here. That panel is actually part of the frame. And then this part of the arch will be patched from behind because it goes all the way across here. So I'll get the top bit done first and then do underneath. So here was the first attempt at making a patch for this area. I've done a reasonable job of getting one half, but I've sort of messed up the other half a little bit. This little piece here was just, yeah, as before, trimmed out, and I've just bent the edge over using adjustable, really. Just use this on the edge of the metal and give it a good old bend. Not too upset with his effort. Like I said, I think in this top corner it's okay, but just mess the angles up down here. So give it another go. It's only metal at the end of the day. So there we have the second attempt at this little panel tacked into place. As you can see, it sort of fits quite nicely. Butt welded along the top here. It'll be butt welded along the edge here. Hopefully I'll have space to be able to grind this corner back a little bit to give it the correct radius to match here and here. Might have to then weld it a second time if I cut through it all. But overall, pretty happy with how things are progressing so far. So now I've made a start on the inner panels. I've turned my attention to the outside because I'm still not sure how I'm going to incorporate the door into this. I think what I'm probably going to do is, like I have now, close the door on the outside and sort of trace around the door, which will then allow me to cut this arch panel and sort of fit it. And then, once again, and then I'll have an arch that looks a bit like this, but with quite a large cutout. And then I guess I'll see what holes are there and fill them in with metal. I think that's going to be the plan. It's all just metal at the end of the day. And I think where it overlaps the door is always going to be a tricky point. I'm just hoping I can give myself still a decent amount of clearance inside. It's going to have to sort of stick in a little bit. We'll see. Here's the arch panel as I've just traced around the edge of the door. And I'm just going to trim off that sort of triangle shape with tin snips. And we'll see how it fits. So here we have the arch panel trimmed and in place. You can sort of see the corner I've cut off by the door here. The gap looks quite big at the moment because the sort of door's not flared out quite enough. But I'm hoping I could just bend the corner of that door out a little bit and match the flare of the arches quite nicely. Overall, it's coming along quite well, I think. I can now open the door with the arch in place. And also, inside here, it's now a bit clearer what gaps I've got left to fill. Which, as before, can be made up of several different panels. Just sort of patchwork quilt them together. Before we know it, this side will be done. So this is what I currently have in mind for this section. It's basically going to be a sort of 10mm lip or so around the edge, just to clear the skin of the door, and then I'll just get another sheet and sort of generally try and form it in to fill this hole. I'll do what I normally do, make it oversize. Then we'll get it sort of reasonably close to shape, and then we'll see. We might trim maybe this bit a little bit more, or maybe trim it up here, depending on how the sheet metal folds. But yeah, I might just cut some metal out and start trying to bend it. This lip here, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this yet. Whether I could do it like I have here with one strip, or whether I can integrate it into the other panel, which will save me sort of welding along this seam here. I think I'll just cut out a rectangle of metal and see how it fits. Actually, scratch that previous plan. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up around this area here, like I've done in a couple of spots, and then get ready to at least tack weld the arch in place. Just because I was thinking, if I'm filling this hole in, I sort of want the arch to be in its final position, and in order to best achieve that, I think maybe clean this lip up. I'm going to keep this lip here. I'm going to bend it out to match the radius of the arch, and then weld along the edge here. So I will have a bit of a lip, but it's saves having to butt weld along the length of this, because if you mess up the gaps or anything, I'll probably end up distorting the panel. Having a little bit of overlap does make it quite a bit easier, and once it's seam sealed and whatever from the inside, there's no risk of rust even. We're making progress with this patch panel here. This is what it looks like off the car. this has been made entirely using universal bending tool, a hammer on this soft mat, and just between like hitting the back of it and using the bending tool, got something that's reasonably close. It's not perfect yet. There's still probably 5mm gap in places. It's like, yeah, there's a big gap there and a big gap up the top here. But it's amazing once you start sort of bending metal, especially once you weld it into place. If I welded this along the edge here, and where it does touch at the back, how much you can just move it with a hammer. So I've just tack welded this piece in for now. Also chopped a couple more tacks, just in the metalwork around. Use trusty old hammer just to try and get this. So I got a little bit carried away, and as you can see I've started welding. I didn't film anything between the last clip and now, but I got this panel trimmed up and fitted nicely, tacked into place. I've also fitted a little panel up here, and yeah, started welding this in place. With this thin sheet metal, I like to do what you can see I've done here. See, I've blown some holes. It is pretty thin. Where I basically go around and do a series of tack welds like this. Then you basically skip an inch, jump along, do another weld, work your way all the way along, then sort of go back to the other side and start working your way back round again. It avoids building up too much heat in any one area, which helps with blowing through and will also help with reducing distortion on this panel here. Disclaimer, I'm an idiot. I don't really know what I'm doing, but this approach does seem to have worked for me in the past. And I've seen plenty of other people use a very similar approach before. So fairly confident it's useful. Like I said, if nothing else, it really helps with blowing through. It doesn't look great at the moment, but I think once these welds are finished and ground back, it should look pretty good. I'm fairly happy with how this is turned out here. Should give me a lot more clearance inside than I had previously. A little tip I learned a while ago when welding things like this hole here, where it's a bit thin and it's blown through. You use a piece of aluminium or copper, and you can basically put this up behind the weld and effectively weld from the steel onto the aluminium, and steel won't stick to this. Same with copper, so it works quite good. It also takes a bit of the heat away, which should allow us to weld up these holes fairly easily. Obviously something like that's not really worth, or even possible, to weld a little patch in there, not without making the hole a lot bigger anyway. So the last clip I showed you guys was a couple of days ago now, where I'd welded everything up. I've now been around with the grinder, ground these welds back as flat as I'm going to, and this is what it's looking like. Obviously you can still see the welds in some places, because I've opted to not completely grind them out because you end up thinning the metal down a bit much, and to be honest, it's smooth. The lightest skim of filler over there and you won't see where those welds are. Same with the areas in here. It's all very nice and smooth now. I think the lightest coat of filler over that, it should be an invisible repair. Looks like I need to get some more welding gas before I continue with the inner arch. Basically empty now, so sort of good timing with that. Given that I've ran out of welding gas, that's pulled the handbrake on me repairing this inner arch, so I think this is where I'm going to leave the video for now. Hopefully there'll be a part 2 up soon, in which case I can finish the inner arch, finish the door, and sort of get the outside sorted. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.